Senior Airman Rachel Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stepped out of the transport van at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the tarmac, making the air shimmer like water. She grabbed her duffel bag and looked around at what would be her new home for the next 3 years. Rachel was 32 years old, which made her older than most of the other airmen at her rank. She had joined the Air Force late, after spending years working as a mechanic in her father's auto shop in San Antonio, Texas. When her father passed away from cancer, Rachel decided to honor his memory by serving her country. He had been a veteran himself, and some of her earliest memories were of him telling stories about his time in the service. The maintenance hangar loomed ahead of her, a massive structure that housed some of the most fearsome aircraft in the military arsenal. Rachel's specialty was weapons systems, and she had requested assignment to work on the A-10 Thunderbolt II, affectionately known as the Warthog. It was an ugly plane, built around a massive 30mm cannon, but it was beloved by ground troops for its ability to provide close air support. Rachel had always admired things that were underestimated based on appearance. As she walked toward the hangar, she noticed a group of young airmen standing near the entrance. They were all men, mostly in their early 20s, and they watched her approach with expressions that ranged from curiosity to skepticism. Rachel had seen those looks before. In 12 years of turning wrenches in her father's shop, she had dealt with plenty of customers who doubted a woman could fix their cars. She had proven them wrong every single time. "Can I help you, ma'am?" one of them called out. He was tall and lean, with corporal stripes on his uniform. His tone wasn't exactly respectful. "I'm Senior Airman Martinez," Rachel said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm assigned to this unit as of today." The corporal exchanged glances with his buddies. "Martinez, you're the new weapons specialist." "That's right." A shorter airman with red hair snickered. "No offense, ma'am, but are you sure you're in the right place? The administrative offices are in Building 12. Rachel felt the familiar tightness in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm here to work on the A-10s. The corporal crossed his arms. "Look, I don't know what they told you, but this isn't easy work. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon weighs over 4,000 pounds. The ammunition drum alone is over 1,600 pounds. We're loading 30mm shells all day long. It's physically demanding." "I can handle it," Rachel said simply. Another airman, this one with sergeant stripes, walked up from inside the hangar. He was older, maybe 40, with gray in his hair and a weathered face that suggested years of outdoor work. "What's going on here?" "Sergeant Kowalski, this is the new weapons specialist," the corporal said. "Senior Airman Martinez." Sergeant Kowalski looked Rachel up and down, his expression unreadable. "You're Martinez. I was expecting someone different." "Different how?" Rachel asked, though she already knew the answer. Kowalski didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "We run a tight operation here, Martinez. These birds are combat ready, and they need to stay that way. Every minute they're down for maintenance is a minute they can't support our troops downrange. We don't have time for anyone who can't keep up." "I understand, Sergeant." "Do you?" Kowalski studied her for a long moment. "Tell you what, we'll give you a shot. But if you can't hack it, I'll have you transferred to supply or admin. We need people who can do the job, not fill quotas." Rachel felt anger flare in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had learned long ago that getting emotional only confirmed people's prejudices. "I'll do the job, Sergeant. That's why I'm here." Kowalski grunted. "Report to Staff Sergeant Chen. He'll show you the ropes. And Martinez, don't slow us down." As Kowalski walked away, the corporal smirked. "Good luck, ma'am. You're going to need it." Rachel followed the directions to find Staff Sergeant Chen, who turned out to be a quiet, efficient man in his late 30s. Unlike the others, he didn't seem particularly surprised or bothered by Rachel's presence. He showed her around the hangar, pointing out the different sections and explaining the workflow. "We've got 6 A-10s in this unit," Chen explained. "They rotate through combat deployments and training exercises. Our job is to make sure the weapons systems are functioning perfectly. The GAU-8 is the heart of this aircraft. It fires up to 65 rounds per second. When it's working right, it's devastating. When it's not, it's just a very expensive paperweight. Rachel nodded, taking in every detail. She had studied the technical manuals extensively during her training, but seeing the actual aircraft up close was different. The A-10 was even more impressive in person. The cannon took up most of the fuselage, and the entire plane was designed around it. "Today, we're doing routine maintenance on tail number 873, Chen continued. "The cannon needs to be cleaned and inspected. It's tedious work, but it's critical. You up for it?" "Absolutely," Rachel said. Chen led her to one of the A-10s parked in the hangar. Several other airmen were already at work on different parts of the aircraft. They looked up when Rachel approached, and she saw the same skeptical expressions she had seen earlier. "Everyone, this is Senior Airman Martinez," Chen announced. "She's joining the weapons team. Martinez, this is Airman First Class Taylor, Airman Brooks, and you already met Corporal Diaz outside." The men nodded, but none of them smiled or offered welcomes. Rachel could feel the wall of resistance. They had already decided she didn't belong here. "Martinez, you'll start by helping with the barrel inspection," Chen said. "Taylor, show her the procedure." Taylor was the red-haired airman who had made the crack about administrative offices. He looked annoyed at being assigned to work with Rachel, but he didn't argue with Chen. "Yes, Sergeant, follow me, ma'am." Rachel followed Taylor to a workstation where cleaning supplies and inspection tools were laid out. The barrel of the GAU-8 cannon consisted of 7 rotating barrels, each 6 feet long. They had to be meticulously cleaned and inspected for any signs of wear or damage. "The process is pretty straightforward," Taylor said in a bored tone. "We use these brushes and solvents to clean each barrel, then we inspect them with the bore scope. Any pitting, cracking, or deformation gets documented and reported. It takes about 4 hours if you know what you're doing. Probably longer for you." Rachel ignored the jab. "Show me once, and I'll take it from there." Taylor demonstrated the technique, moving quickly and efficiently. Rachel watched carefully, nodding every step. When he finished with one barrel, he stepped back. "Your turn." Rachel picked up the brush and solvent. She had cleaned gun barrels before, just on a much smaller scale. The principle was the same, though. She worked methodically, making sure to cover every inch of the barrel's interior. Her hands were steady, her movements confident. Taylor watched with his arms crossed. After a few minutes, he said, "You're going too slow. We don't have all day." "I'm being thorough," Rachel replied calmly. "Isn't that the point?" "The point is to get the job done efficiently. At this rate, we'll be here until midnight." Rachel didn't respond. She continued working at her own pace, refusing to be rushed. When she finished, she carefully inspected the barrel with the bore scope, checking for any imperfections. The barrel was clean and undamaged. "Satisfied?" Taylor asked sarcastically. "Yes," Rachel said. "1 down, 6 to go." She spent the rest of the afternoon working on the cannon barrels. The other airmen kept their distance, occasionally making comments just loud enough for her to hear. They questioned her speed, her technique, her very presence in the hangar. But Rachel kept working, blocking out the negativity. She had dealt with worse in her father's shop. By the time the shift ended, Rachel had completed the cleaning and inspection of all 7 barrels. Her back ached and her hands were sore, but the work was done properly. Staff Sergeant Chen inspected her work and nodded with approval. "Good job, Martinez. This is quality work." "Thank you, Sergeant." As Rachel gathered her things to leave, she overheard Corporal Diaz talking to another airman near the hangar door. "Give her a week," Diaz said. "She'll wash out or transfer, they always do." Rachel walked past them without acknowledging the comment. She didn't need their approval. She just needed to do her job. But as she headed back to her quarters that evening, she felt the weight of being constantly judged, constantly doubted. It was exhausting. That night, lying in her bunk, Rachel thought about her father. He had faced his own battles, both in the military and in civilian life. He had taught her that respect had to be earned, not given. And he had taught her that the best way to earn respect was through consistent, Excellent work. I won't let you down, Dad, she whispered into the darkness. I'll show them. Tomorrow would be another day, another chance to prove herself. Rachel closed her eyes, determined to face whatever challenges came her way. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of Rachel's military career. Every day brought new challenges, not from the work itself, but from the constant resistance of her fellow airmen. They questioned every decision she made, double-checked every task she completed, and watched her like hawks waiting for her to make a mistake. Corporal Diaz seemed to take particular pleasure in making things difficult. He would assign Rachel the most tedious tasks, the ones that required hours of careful, repetitive work. He would change instructions at the last minute, claiming he had forgotten to mention important details. And he always seemed to be watching, waiting for her to complain or falter. Rachel never gave him the satisfaction. She arrived early every day and stayed late. She volunteered for extra shifts. When the other airmen went to lunch, she often stayed behind to finish her work. She studied the technical manuals every evening, memorizing every specification, every procedure, every tolerance. Staff Sergeant Chen noticed her dedication. One afternoon, as Rachel was finishing up a particularly complex calibration task, he approached her workstation. "You're doing good work, Martinez," he said quietly. "Better than good, actually. You're one of the most thorough technicians I've seen in a long time." Rachel looked up, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you, Sergeant. I'm just trying to do my job." Chen glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "I know it hasn't been easy. Some of the guys, they have old-fashioned attitudes. But don't let them get to you. Keep doing what you're doing, and eventually they'll come around." "I appreciate that, Sergeant." Chen nodded and walked away. It was a small moment, but it meant a lot to Rachel. At least someone recognized her efforts. But if Chen appreciated her work, Sergeant Kowalski seemed determined to prove she didn't belong. During weekly inspections, he would scrutinize Rachel's workstations with extra intensity, looking for any reason to criticize her. He found fault with things he overlooked in other airmen's work. He questioned her knowledge during briefings, asking technical questions designed to trip her up. Rachel answered every question correctly. She kept her work areas immaculate. She refused to give Kowalski any legitimate reason to complain, but she could see the frustration building in him. He wanted her to fail, and she wasn't cooperating. One particularly hot afternoon in early September, the maintenance crew was preparing an A-10 for a training mission. The aircraft had been experiencing intermittent issues with its weapons targeting system, and the pilot had requested a thorough inspection before takeoff. Rachel was assigned to diagnose the problem. She spent over an hour tracing circuits, checking connections, and running diagnostic tests. Finally, she found the issue, a corroded connector deep in the targeting computer housing. It was a small problem, but one that could cause significant issues during flight. She reported her findings to Sergeant Kowalski, who was overseeing the pre-flight preparations. "I found the issue, Sergeant. Connector J-17 in the targeting computer has significant corrosion. It needs to be replaced before this bird flies." Kowalski frowned. "Corrosion, let me see." Rachel led him to the access panel and showed him the corroded connector. It was clearly visible, the metal discolored and degraded. Kowalski stared at it for a long moment. Then he said, "That's just surface oxidation. It doesn't affect functionality. Close it up." Rachel was stunned. "Sergeant, that level of corrosion could cause intermittent signal loss. That's probably what's been causing the targeting issues. We need to replace it." "I'm the senior NCO here, Martinez, and I'm telling you it's fine. We have a training schedule to maintain. Close it up and sign off on the inspection." Rachel felt her heart pounding. She knew she was right. That connector needed to be replaced, but Kowalski was her superior. If she pushed back too hard, it could be considered insubordination. "Sergeant, with respect, I really think we should replace that connector. If the targeting system fails during the mission." "The mission is a training exercise over the range," Kowalski interrupted. "Not a combat sortie. The pilot knows there are intermittent issues. He can work around them. Now, are you going to sign off on this inspection, or do I need to have someone else do it? Rachel looked at the corroded connector, then back at Kowalski. She thought about her father, about the lessons he had taught her. He had always said that integrity meant doing the right thing, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. I can't sign off on it, Sergeant, Rachel said quietly but firmly. Not in good conscience. That connector needs to be replaced. Kowalski's face turned red. You're refusing a direct order. I'm refusing to certify an aircraft as airworthy when I know there's a maintenance issue that could compromise safety. That's my responsibility as a weapons specialist. For a moment, Rachel thought Kowalski might explode. His jaw clenched, and she could see the vein pulsing in his temple. But before he could respond, a voice came from behind them. Is there a problem here? They both turned to see a tall officer approaching. He was a captain, and his flight suit indicated he was a pilot. Rachel recognized him from the squadron briefings, Captain James Morrison, one of the A-10 pilots in the unit. No problem, sir, Kowalski said quickly. Just a minor disagreement about maintenance procedures. Captain Morrison looked at Rachel. What's the disagreement, Airman? Rachel hesitated. Speaking up to a captain could get her in serious trouble, especially if she was going over Kowalski's head. But the safety issue was real. Sir, I found a corroded connector in the targeting computer. I recommended replacing it before flight, but Sergeant Kowalski believes it's not necessary. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Show me. Rachel led both men back to the access panel and pointed out the corroded connector. Morrison leaned in close, examining it carefully. Then he pulled out his flashlight and looked even more closely. That's not just surface oxidation, Morrison said. That's significant corrosion. How long has this bird been having targeting issues? 3 weeks, sir, Rachel answered. Intermittent problems with the heads-up display and the targeting reticle. Morrison straightened up and looked at Kowalski. Sergeant, why hasn't this been replaced? Kowalski shifted uncomfortably. Sir, we've been prioritizing combat readiness issues. This aircraft has been scheduled for training missions only, so you've been flying an aircraft with a known defect for 3 weeks. Morrison's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. Sergeant, even training missions require aircraft to be fully operational. What if this had been a real-world scenario? What if we had needed this bird for a combat sortie and the targeting system failed? Sir, replace the connector, Morrison said firmly, and document it properly. Training mission or not, we maintain these aircraft to the same standards. Yes, sir. Morrison turned to Rachel. Good catch, Airman. What's your name? Senior Airman Martinez, sir. Well, Martinez, thank you for standing your ground. That took guts. He looked back at Kowalski. Sergeant, I suggest you listen to your people when they raise legitimate concerns. This airman potentially just saved a very expensive aircraft and a pilot's life. Morrison walked away, leaving Kowalski and Rachel standing by the aircraft. Kowalski glared at Rachel with barely contained fury. You just made a powerful enemy, Martinez, he said in a low voice. You made me look bad in front of an officer. That was a mistake. Rachel met his gaze steadily. I did my job, Sergeant, that's all. Your job is to follow orders. My orders, you better remember that. Kowalski stormed off, leaving Rachel alone. Her hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but she felt a sense of satisfaction too. She had done the right thing, even though it might cost her. The rest of the day was tense. Word spread quickly through the maintenance crew about what had happened. Some of the airmen seemed impressed that Rachel had stood up to Kowalski, but others saw it as further proof that she was a troublemaker who didn't fit in. Corporal Diaz made his opinion clear. You should have just done what Kowalski said, he told Rachel as they were cleaning up at the end of the shift. Now you've painted a target on your back. You think you're some kind of hero. I think I'm a mechanic who takes safety seriously, Rachel replied. That's all. Whatever you say, but don't expect any of us to back you up when Kowalski comes for you. You're on your own. Rachel went back to her quarters that evening feeling emotionally drained. She had won the battle today, but she knew the war was far from over. Kowalski would be looking for any excuse to write her up, to make her life miserable, to force her out of the unit. As she lay in her bunk that night, she wondered if it was worth it. Maybe it would be easier to just transfer to another unit, to start fresh somewhere else. But even as the thought crossed her mind, she rejected it. Her father hadn't raised a quitter. And these aircraft, these weapons systems, they were critical to the mission. Pilots' lives depended on the work she and her fellow maintainers did. She couldn't compromise on that, no matter how difficult it made her life. Rachel pulled out her phone and looked at a photo of her father, taken years ago in his auto shop. He was smiling, his hands covered in grease, standing next to a restored classic car. She remembered his words. "Do the work right, Mija, always. Because somewhere down the line, somebody's life might depend on it." "I'm doing the work right, Dad," she whispered. "No matter what it costs me." Outside, the desert wind howled across the base, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the roar of an A-10's engines as another training mission took off into the night sky. October brought cooler weather to Nellie's Air Force Base, but the atmosphere in the maintenance hangar remained hostile. True to his word, Sergeant Kowalski had made Rachel's life increasingly difficult. He assigned her to the least desirable shifts, often scheduling her for overnight maintenance when most of the crew was off duty. He scrutinized her paperwork with excessive detail, sending back reports for minor formatting issues. And he made sure that other members of the crew knew that associating with Rachel could damage their own standing. The isolation was the hardest part. Rachel could handle the extra work and the unfair treatment, but being completely shut out by her peers wore on her spirit. At mealtimes, she sat alone. During breaks, the other airmen talked and joked together while she remained apart. Even Staff Sergeant Chen, who had been supportive before, now kept his distance. Rachel understood why. He had his own career to protect, but it still hurt. The only bright spot was her work. Rachel threw herself into every task with fierce determination. She became the most knowledgeable person in the unit about the A-10's weapons systems. She could diagnose problems faster than anyone else, and her maintenance records were flawless. The aircraft she worked on never had repeat issues. They were combat-ready every single time. Captain Morrison noticed. He made a point of requesting Rachel for pre-flight inspections when it was his turn to fly. He never said much, just a nod of acknowledgement and a "good work, Martinez." But it meant everything to Rachel. At least one person in this unit valued her contributions. In mid-October, the squadron received word that they would be deploying to support overseas operations within the next 6 months. The announcement raised the stakes for everyone. This wasn't just training anymore. These aircraft would be flying real combat missions, supporting real troops in real danger. The maintenance tempo increased dramatically. Aircraft had to be brought to peak readiness. Every system had to be thoroughly checked and rechecked. The pressure was intense, and tempers grew short. Rachel was working a night shift in early November when everything came to a head. She was alone in the hangar, performing a scheduled inspection on one of the A-10s. The cannon needed a complete overhaul, which meant disassembling major components, cleaning and inspecting every part, and then carefully reassembling everything. It was painstaking work, especially alone. But Rachel didn't mind. She actually preferred the solitude of the night shifts. No one was around to criticize or second-guess her, just her and the aircraft working together in the quiet darkness of the hangar. She was deep into the inspection, her hands covered in grease, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Corporal Diaz and Airman Brooks approaching. They had been scheduled for a different shift, so their presence here was unusual. "Working late, Martinez?" Diaz asked. There was something off about his tone, something that made Rachel instantly wary. "Just doing my job," she replied, turning back to her work. "What are you guys doing here?" "Kowalski sent us to check on you," Brooks said. "He wanted to make sure you weren't cutting corners on the inspection." Rachel felt anger flare in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "I don't cut corners. You're welcome to review my work." Diaz walked around the aircraft, his eyes scanning the work area. Then he picked up Rachel's inspection checklist and started reading through it. "You know, Martinez, I've been thinking. It's pretty convenient how you always find problems that no one else sees, like that corroded connector a few weeks ago. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, maybe you're creating problems so you can be the hero who fixes them. Makes you look good, makes the rest of us look bad. Rachel put down her tools and faced Diaz directly. That's ridiculous. Every problem I've found has been real and documented. You can check the maintenance logs. Or maybe you're sabotaging the aircraft, Brooks chimed in. Maybe you don't actually want these birds to fly. Maybe you've got some kind of agenda. Rachel felt her heart pounding. This was serious. They were essentially accusing her of treason, of deliberately endangering lives. That's insane. Why would I do that? Diaz stepped closer, his face hard. Maybe because you don't really belong here. Maybe because you're trying to prove some point about women in combat roles. Who knows? But it's interesting how much trouble we've had since you showed up. Get out, Rachel said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. Get out of my work area right now. Or what, you'll report us, Diaz laughed. To who? Kowalski, he's the one who sent us. Chen, he's not going to stick his neck out for you. Morrison, he's just a pilot. He doesn't control maintenance operations. Rachel realized with sinking certainty that they were right. She had no allies in this unit, no one who would stand up for her against these false accusations. And if Kowalski was behind this, then it was an orchestrated effort to push her out. I'm documenting this conversation, Rachel said, pulling out her phone. Both of you just accused me of sabotage on record. That's a serious allegation, and I'm reporting it through proper channels. Diaz's expression changed, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Put the phone away, Martinez. We're just talking. No, you were making accusations. False accusations about a fellow airman. That's against regulations, and you both know it. Brooks looked nervous. Come on, Diaz, let's go. This was a bad idea. But Diaz wasn't ready to back down. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think because you can quote regulations and do the technical work, that makes you one of us. It doesn't. You'll never be one of us. I don't want to be one of you, Rachel shot back. I want to do my job and serve my country. That's all I've ever wanted. But you and Kowalski and the others, you'd rather play these games than focus on the mission. You'd rather push out someone who threatens your little boys' club than work together as a team. Watch your mouth, Martinez, Diaz growled. Or what? You'll make up more lies about me? Go ahead. I've documented everything. Every unfair assignment, every double standard, every instance of harassment. I've got dates, times, witnesses when available. So if you want to keep playing this game, bring it on. But I'm not going anywhere. Diaz and Brooks exchanged glances. Then Diaz sneered. We'll see about that. And they both walked away, their footsteps echoing in the empty hangar. Rachel stood there, shaking with adrenaline and anger. She looked down at her hands and saw they were trembling. The confrontation had taken more out of her than she wanted to admit. She felt exhausted, not physically but emotionally. How much more of this could she take? She sat down on a work stool and put her head in her hands. For the first time since joining this unit, she felt tears threatening. She had tried so hard to be strong, to prove herself, to earn respect through excellent work. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough for people like Diaz and Kowalski. They had decided from day one that she didn't belong, and nothing she did would change their minds. The sound of footsteps made her look up quickly, wiping her eyes. But it wasn't Diaz or Brooks returning. It was Staff Sergeant Chen. Martinez, I heard voices. Are you okay? Rachel stood up, straightening her uniform. I'm fine, Sergeant. Chen looked around the hangar, then back at Rachel. His expression was troubled. Diaz and Brooks were just here, weren't they? What did they want? Nothing important, just checking on my work. Martinez. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. I know what's been going on. I've seen how they treat you, how Kowalski treats you, and I'm ashamed that I haven't done more to stop it. Rachel was surprised by the admission. Sergeant, you don't have to. Yes, I do, because what's happening here is wrong. You're one of the best technicians I've ever worked with, and instead of appreciating that, this unit has tried to drive you out. That's not the Air Force I signed up for. That's not the values we're supposed to represent. So what are you saying? Rachel asked. Chen took a deep breath. I'm saying that I'm going to back you up. Whatever happens next, whatever Kowalski or Diaz or anyone else tries to do, I'm on your side. And I'm going to start documenting the harassment you've been experiencing. It stops now. Rachel felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone anymore. Thank you, Sergeant. You have no idea what that means to me. You shouldn't have to thank me for doing the right thing. That's just basic decency. Chen paused, then added, But Martinez, you should know that standing up to Kowalski might get ugly. He has friends in the command structure. This could affect both our careers. I understand, Rachel said. But I'm not backing down. Not now. These aircraft are about to deploy to combat zones. Lives depend on the work we do here. We can't let personal grudges and prejudice compromise that mission. Chen nodded. Agreed. Okay, let's make a plan. First, you need to file a formal complaint with the Equal Opportunity Office. Document everything that's happened, every incident, every witness. I'll provide my own statement supporting your account. Second, we need to make sure your work is beyond reproach. No gaps, no mistakes, nothing they can use against you. My work has always been beyond reproach, Rachel said. I know, but now we make sure it's documented and visible. Every inspection, every repair, every maintenance action, we document it thoroughly. We make it impossible for them to claim you're anything less than excellent at your job. Rachel felt a new sense of determination filling her. With Chen's support, she actually had a chance to fight back, to clear her name and continue serving. Okay, let's do it. They spent the next hour going through Rachel's records, organizing documentation, and planning their approach. By the time they finished, Rachel felt more hopeful than she had in weeks. As Chen was preparing to leave, he turned back to Rachel. One more thing. Captain Morrison has been asking questions about the maintenance situation in this unit. I think he suspects something's wrong. If he asks you directly about what's been happening, tell him the truth. He's a good officer. He'll listen. I will. After Chen left, Rachel returned to her work on the A-10's cannon. Her hands were steady now, her mind focused. She had been tested, pushed to her breaking point, but she hadn't broken. And now she had an ally, someone who believed in her and was willing to stand with her. As she worked through the night, carefully inspecting each component of the weapons system, Rachel thought about all the pilots who would depend on this aircraft. They would fly into danger, trusting that their weapons would work when they needed them. That trust was sacred, and Rachel would not betray it, no matter what personal battles she had to fight. The cannon gleamed under the work lights as Rachel reassembled it, each piece fitting perfectly into place. It was a weapon of war, designed to protect and defend. And Rachel was the guardian of that weapon, ensuring it would be ready when called upon. The formal complaint Rachel filed with the Equal Opportunity Office set off a chain of events that rippled through the maintenance squadron. Within days, an inspector from the base command arrived to investigate her allegations. Sergeant Kowalski was called in for questioning, as were Corporal Diaz and several other members of the maintenance crew. The atmosphere in the hangar became even more tense. The airmen who had been hostile to Rachel before now avoided her completely, as if she carried some contagious disease. But Rachel also noticed something else. A few of the younger airmen, the ones who had stayed mostly neutral throughout, started treating her with a new respect. They had seen her stand up to the system and refuse to be pushed out. That took courage. Captain Morrison requested a private meeting with Rachel in his office. She arrived promptly, uncertain what to expect. "Sit down, Martinez," Morrison said, gesturing to a chair. His office was spare but professional, with photos of various aircraft on the walls and a few personal items on his desk, including a picture of him with a woman and 2 young children. "Sir," Rachel said, sitting at attention. Morrison studied her for a moment before speaking. "I wanted you to know that I've been making my own inquiries into the maintenance operations of this squadron. Some concerning patterns have emerged." Rachel waited, unsure if she should respond. "Over the past 2 years, this unit has had an unusually high rate of turnover among maintenance personnel," Morrison continued. particularly among women and minority airmen. Most of them requested transfers after just a few months. When I looked into the reasons, I found a lot of vague explanations about not fitting in or seeking different opportunities. But reading between the lines, it's clear there's been a culture problem here for a long time. "Sir, I can't speak to what happened before I arrived," Rachel said carefully. "I know, but I can see what's happened since you got here. And I want you to know that your complaint is being taken seriously at the highest levels. This isn't just an EO issue anymore. This is a readiness issue. We can't afford to lose good maintainers because of a toxic work environment." "I appreciate that, sir." Morrison leaned forward. "Martinez, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you ever felt that the hostile environment in this unit has affected your ability to do your job? Have you ever been pressured to certify an aircraft when you had concerns about its readiness?" Rachel thought carefully about how to answer. The truth was complicated. "Sir, I've never certified an aircraft that I believed was unsafe to fly. But there have been times when I've been pressured to overlook issues or to prioritize schedule over thoroughness. I haven't given in to that pressure, but it's been constant." Morrison's expression darkened. "That's what I was afraid of. Martinez, I'm going to be frank with you. If what you're describing is true, and I believe it is, then we've got a serious problem. Our aircraft are about to deploy to a combat zone. Lives will depend on these weapons systems functioning perfectly. We cannot have a maintenance culture that prioritizes speed over safety or that drives out the most conscientious technicians." "No, sir. I'm escalating this to the squadron commander and the wing commander. There's going to be a thorough review of all maintenance operations in this unit. And Martinez, I want you to be part of that review. I want you to inspect every aircraft in this squadron personally and certify that they're combat ready. Can you do that?" Rachel felt the weight of what he was asking. "Sir, that would put me in direct conflict with Sergeant Kowalski and most of the maintenance chain of command." "I know, but I trust your judgment, and frankly, I don't fully trust theirs anymore. I need someone who will tell me the truth about the condition of these aircraft, regardless of how it affects the schedule or anyone's ego. Are you that person?" Rachel met his gaze steadily. "Yes, sir, I am." "Good. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 0800. We'll begin a systematic review of the entire fleet. And Martinez, watch your back. People who benefit from the current system won't be happy about this." Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel worked longer hours than she ever had before. She inspected every A-10 in the squadron from nose to tail, paying particular attention to the weapons systems. What she found shocked her. 3 of the 6 aircraft had significant maintenance issues that had been either overlooked or deliberately ignored. One had a hydraulic leak in the cannon feed system that could cause a catastrophic failure during sustained fire. Another had worn bearings in the ammunition drum that were well beyond their service life. The third had an electrical short that could potentially cause an accidental discharge. None of these issues were immediately obvious, and all of them had been noted in maintenance logs at some point, but marked as acceptable for flight operations by the reviewing NCO, which in each case had been Sergeant Kowalski. Rachel documented everything meticulously. She took photos, cross-referenced maintenance logs, and prepared detailed reports. When she presented her findings to Captain Morrison, his face went pale. "Martinez, are you telling me that we've been flying aircraft with these defects?" "Yes, sir. These aircraft were all certified as combat-ready within the last 3 months. But none of them have had in-flight failures. Why not?" "Because we've been lucky, sir. These are all problems that would only manifest under specific conditions: sustained fire, high G-forces, extreme temperatures. In training missions over the range, the aircraft haven't been pushed hard enough to trigger failures. But in actual combat, with real enemy fire and real operational stress, any one of these could be catastrophic." Morrison sat back in his chair, running his hand through his hair. "Jesus, if we had deployed with these birds in this condition, we would have put pilots at risk, sir, and potentially failed our mission to support troops on the ground. I need to brief the squadron commander immediately. This changes everything." Morrison looked at Rachel with new intensity. Martinez, how did you spot these issues when no one else did? With respect, sir, I think some people did spot them, but they were pressured to sign off anyway to keep the schedule moving. I just refused to play that game. Morrison nodded slowly. Your refusal may have saved lives, you know that? If we had deployed and one of these systems had failed in combat. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. That afternoon, Squadron Commander Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Hendricks called an emergency meeting of all maintenance personnel. Rachel had never met the squadron commander before. She was a distant figure, someone who occasionally walked through the hangar but rarely interacted with the enlisted maintainers directly. Hendricks was a stern woman in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She stood at the front of the briefing room, waiting for everyone to settle. I'm going to be direct, Hendricks began. An investigation into maintenance operations in this unit has revealed serious deficiencies in our procedures and culture. Multiple aircraft were certified as combat-ready when they had significant safety issues. This is unacceptable. Rachel could feel eyes turning toward her, some grateful, others hostile. Effective immediately, all aircraft in this squadron are grounded until they undergo complete inspections. Senior Airman Martinez will lead the inspection team, with oversight from Captain Morrison and myself. Any maintenance actions she recommends will be implemented without question. There was murmuring in the room. This was unprecedented, a senior airman essentially being given authority over the entire maintenance operation. Hendricks held up her hand for silence. I know this is unusual, but the stakes are too high to worry about hurt feelings or bruised egos. These aircraft are going to war. The pilots flying them deserve to know that every system has been checked and certified by someone who will tell the truth, regardless of schedule pressure or personal consequences. She looked directly at Kowalski. Sergeant Kowalski, you are relieved of your supervisory duties pending the outcome of the investigation. Staff Sergeant Chen will assume temporary leadership of the maintenance team. Kowalski's face turned red, but he said nothing. Furthermore, Hendricks continued, I'm initiating a comprehensive review of our maintenance culture. Every member of this unit will undergo retraining on safety protocols, chain of command procedures, and professional conduct. We will root out the toxic elements that have allowed this situation to develop. After the meeting, as people filed out of the briefing room, Rachel felt a mix of emotions. Vindication, certainly. Her concerns had been taken seriously and action was being taken. But also apprehension. She had just been given enormous responsibility, and there were still people in this unit who hated her for it. As she walked back to the hangar, Staff Sergeant Chen fell into step beside her. Hell of a day, he said. Yeah, Rachel agreed. Chen, I don't want this to seem like I'm trying to take over or undermine the chain of command. I know you're not. You're trying to keep people safe. That's the whole point of what we do. Chen paused. For what it's worth, I think Hendricks made the right call. If anyone can get these birds ready for combat, it's you. I'll need help. I can't inspect and repair 6 aircraft by myself. You'll have it. The younger guys, the ones who have been keeping their heads down, they respect what you've done. They'll work with you, and I'll make sure of it. Over the next month, Rachel worked with a small team of dedicated maintainers to bring all 6 A-10s up to true combat-ready status. It was exhausting work, long days and longer nights, but it was also rewarding. For the first time since arriving at Nellie's, Rachel felt like she was truly part of a team. The aircraft gradually came back online, one by one, each one thoroughly inspected and certified. The pilots noticed the difference, too. The weapons systems performed flawlessly, the targeting was more accurate, the reliability was near perfect. As December approached, the deployment date drew closer. The squadron would be leaving for the Middle East in January. The pressure was intense, but Rachel felt ready. The aircraft were ready. But there was still one more revelation to come, one that would change everything. It was mid-December, 3 weeks before deployment, when Rachel made the discovery that would become part of Air Force history. She was performing a final deep inspection of aircraft 873, the same A-10, where she had first found the corroded connector months ago. This aircraft had been giving the pilots the most trouble over the years, with recurring issues that seemed to defy diagnosis. Rachel had always suspected there was some underlying problem that previous maintainers had missed, and she was determined to find it. She was alone in the hangar late at night, lying on a creeper under the belly of the aircraft, when she noticed something unusual. There was a slight discoloration in the metal around one of the cannon mount points. It was subtle, barely visible even with a work light shining directly on it. Rachel rolled out from under the aircraft and grabbed her inspection equipment. She came back with an ultrasonic thickness gauge and a bore scope. For the next hour, she carefully examined the mounting structure, taking measurements and comparing them to the technical specifications. What she found made her blood run cold. The mounting structure showed signs of stress fracturing, microscopic cracks in the metal that had been growing slowly over time. This wasn't the result of recent damage. This was a manufacturing defect, something that had been present since the aircraft was built. And it was in a critical load-bearing structure that held the GAU-8 cannon in place. If this fracture continued to grow, the entire cannon could potentially tear loose during flight. It would be catastrophic, the aircraft would be unflyable, and the pilot might not be able to eject safely. And given the age and service history of aircraft 873, Rachel suspected this defect might be present in other early production A-10s as well. She immediately called Captain Morrison, despite the late hour. He arrived at the hangar within 20 minutes, still in civilian clothes. "Show me," he said. Rachel walked him through her findings, showing him the measurements and the scope images. Morrison's expression grew increasingly serious as he absorbed the information. "This isn't just our aircraft, is it?" he asked. "No, sir. This could affect A-10s across the entire Air Force fleet. Every aircraft from this production run needs to be inspected immediately." "Jesus, Martinez, do you understand what you've just found? This could ground hundreds of aircraft." "I know, sir, but we can't ignore it. If even one aircraft has a catastrophic failure because of this defect." "I know, you're right. Okay, I need to brief the squadron commander immediately, and this needs to go up the chain fast. This is a flight safety issue for the entire A-10 community." Within hours, the base was in full crisis mode. Lieutenant Colonel Hendricks arrived in the middle of the night. By dawn, engineers from the A-10 program office had been dispatched to Nellie's. By that afternoon, a general from Air Combat Command had arrived to oversee the response. Rachel spent the next 3 days living in the hangar, working with the engineers to document the defect and develop inspection procedures. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. But she knew this was important, potentially one of the most important discoveries of her career. The inspection procedures Rachel helped develop were distributed across the Air Force. Over the next week, dozens of A-10s were found to have similar stress fractures. All of them were immediately grounded for repairs. It was a massive undertaking, but it potentially prevented numerous catastrophic failures. On December 23rd, just 2 days before Christmas, the squadron held a formation in front of the main hangar. Rachel had no idea why she'd been ordered to attend in dress blues. She had been so focused on the technical work that she hadn't paid attention to anything else. The entire squadron was there, all the pilots, all the maintenance personnel, even people from other squadrons on the base. At the front stood Lieutenant Colonel Hendricks, along with several senior officers Rachel didn't recognize. "Senior Airman Rachel Martinez, front and center," Hendricks called out. Rachel marched forward, her heart pounding. Had she done something wrong? Was this some kind of disciplinary action? But when she reached the front, Hendricks was smiling. "Senior Airman Martinez, 3 months ago you arrived at this unit as an untested maintainer. Since that time, you have demonstrated exceptional technical skill, unwavering integrity, and extraordinary dedication to flight safety. Your refusal to compromise on maintenance standards, even in the face of significant pressure and personal cost, embodies the core values of our Air Force." Rachel stood at attention, unsure where this was going. 2 weeks ago, your meticulous inspection work uncovered a critical manufacturing defect that has affected aircraft throughout the fleet. Your discovery has potentially saved dozens of lives and prevented the loss of millions of dollars in aircraft. You have brought great credit upon yourself, this squadron, and the United States Air Force. Hendricks stepped aside, and one of the senior officers stepped forward. Rachel recognized the stars on his uniform, a 2-star general. Senior Airman Martinez, the general said, on behalf of the Air Force Chief of Staff, I am honored to present you with the Air Force Achievement Medal for your outstanding contributions to flight safety and mission readiness. As the general pinned the medal to Rachel's uniform, she felt tears welling up in her eyes. After months of doubt, criticism, and isolation, she was finally being recognized for doing what she had always simply tried to do, her job to the best of her ability. But the ceremony wasn't over. Additionally, the general continued, I am pleased to inform you that you have been selected for promotion to Staff Sergeant, effective immediately. Furthermore, you are being assigned as the lead technical advisor for the A-10 fleet-wide inspection program. You will work directly with the program office to ensure that every A-10 in the Air Force is inspected and certified safe. Rachel could barely process what she was hearing. A promotion, a medal, and a new assignment that would take her to the highest levels of Air Force maintenance operations. The general shook her hand, then stepped back. Captain Morrison stepped forward next. Martinez, I've flown combat missions in A-10s for over 10 years. I've trusted my life to these aircraft and to the maintainers who keep them flying. You are the finest maintainer I have ever worked with. It has been an honor to serve with you. Morrison came to attention and saluted. It was unusual. Officers didn't normally salute enlisted personnel. But Morrison held the salute, sharp and precise. And then something extraordinary happened. One by one, every officer in the formation came to attention and saluted. The pilots, the squadron commanders, even the 2-star general. They all saluted Rachel, a simple senior airman, now staff sergeant, who had just been doing her job. But more than that, the enlisted personnel in the formation began to salute as well. Staff Sergeant Chen, then Airman First Class Taylor, then even Corporal Diaz, shame evident on his face. One by one, the entire maintenance crew raised their hands in salute. Rachel, tears now streaming freely down her face, returned the salute. The formation held it for a long moment, a gesture of respect and recognition that transcended rank and protocol. When the salutes finally dropped, Lieutenant Colonel Hendricks spoke again. Martinez, I owe you an apology. This squadron failed you when you first arrived. We allowed a toxic culture to persist, a culture that drove away talented people and compromised our mission. You stood firm when others would have quit. You insisted on excellence when others were willing to accept good enough. You have reminded all of us why we serve and what our values truly mean. After the formation dismissed, people lined up to shake Rachel's hand and congratulate her. Even some of the airmen who had been hostile to her before approached with words of respect and apology. Sergeant Kowalski, who had been standing at the back of the formation, approached last. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past month. The investigation had revealed that he had systematically pressured maintainers to cut corners and had retaliated against those who refused. He was being transferred to a non-supervisory position at another base, and his career was effectively over. Martinez, he said quietly, I was wrong about everything. You're a better maintainer than I ever was and a better airman. I let my prejudices and my ego compromise the mission. That's unforgivable. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Rachel looked at him for a long moment. She could have said something cutting, something to drive home how badly he had treated her. But looking at his broken expression, she realized he already knew. And despite everything, she wasn't a person who held onto bitterness. Thank you for saying that, Sergeant, she said. I hope you learn from this. Kowalski nodded and walked away, his shoulders slumped. That evening, Rachel sat alone in the hangar, next to aircraft 873. The repairs had been completed, and the bird was ready to fly again. Rachel ran her hand along the freshly painted metal, feeling the smooth coldness beneath her palm. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from the A-10 program office, welcoming her to the inspection team and providing details about her new assignment. She would be traveling to Air Force bases around the country, training other maintainers on the new inspection procedures, ensuring that every aircraft met the highest standards. It was exactly the kind of work she had always wanted to do, meaningful, important, making a real difference. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photo of her father again. She wished he could see her now, wearing the new stripes on her uniform, a medal on her chest, respected and valued for her skills and integrity. "I did it, Dad," she whispered. "I stood firm. I did the work right no matter what it cost me, and it mattered. It really mattered." Outside, the sun was setting over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. In a few weeks, the squadron would deploy, flying these aircraft into combat. But Rachel wouldn't be going with them. Her new assignment was keeping her stateside. Part of her felt disappointed to miss the deployment, but she knew her work here was just as important. The aircraft she had inspected and certified would keep pilots safe. The procedures she had helped develop would prevent catastrophic failures. The culture she had helped change would ensure that future maintainers could speak up about safety concerns without fear of retaliation. One person, standing firm on principle, refusing to compromise, insisting on excellence. It had seemed so small at the time, just doing her job, just following the regulations, just telling the truth. But small acts of integrity, repeated consistently, could change everything. As Rachel walked out of the hangar that evening, she passed the spot where she had first arrived at Nellie's 4 months ago. She remembered how she had felt that day, determined but uncertain, ready to prove herself but unsure if she would be given the chance. Now she knew the truth. She didn't need anyone's permission to prove herself. She just needed to do the work, honestly and excellently, day after day, no matter who was watching or what obstacles stood in her way. Character was built in the small moments, in the decisions no one else saw, in the choice to do right even when doing wrong would be easier. And in the end, character was what mattered most. Rachel climbed into her car and drove off the base, past the guard gate, into the cool desert night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new aircraft to inspect, new maintainers to train. But tonight, she could rest, knowing she had honored her father's memory, served her country well, and proven that one person, standing firm, could make all the difference. The stars came out over the desert, brilliant and countless in the clear air. And somewhere in the distance, an A-10 Thunderbolt took to the sky, its powerful engines roaring, its weapons systems functioning perfectly, ready to protect and defend, a testament to the skill and integrity of the maintainers who kept it flying. Rachel smiled as she drove, the wind in her hair, her father's memory in her heart, and a future full of purpose stretching out before her like the open road.